I'm joined by my colleague Rick Phillips today. Rick, do you want to just say a quick hello?
Hi there, Matthew, and everybody that's watching.
So Rick's Senior Airport Fire Officer at Humberside Airport. He's got a really big role there, actually, and I'll obviously leave that to Rick to talk to us about. So perhaps you can tell us something about your current role.
Yeah, my current role, it started off where I was managing the fire service here, so the rescue and firefighting service. And linked with that, we have our own delivery mechanism for fuel. So we have our own fuel department with Bowsers and a fuel farm. And it sort of lent itself more to my skill set than where it was previously managed through airfield operations. So my previous experience with dealing with hazardous materials and fuel and etc. within my fire and rescue career in Humberside Fire and Rescue lent itself to that. So I have oversight really of managing that department to ensure that we're compliant and following all the best regulations and making sure we do best practice. And then linked with that, we looked at the overarching role of the health and safety manager within the airport. And so it was more or less thrust upon me to say, yeah, would you like to do the health and safety role? So I jumped at the chance to do that because it's almost separate to the safety manager of the airport, which those working within the industry will understand that that is a different type of role. That's more aviation stroke operational safety rather than the more normal health and safety that people would tend to understand within a different business. And so I work very closely with the safety manager here to make sure that we link things together, much like the HSE and the Civil Aviation Authority have done with a memo of understanding that they have working together now.
So before you was at the airport, you were in not an operational fire role, because I think you got involved in training, is that right, within the brigade?
Well, yeah, it was a bit of a dual role, really. I mean, I started off in 1985, many moons ago. Worked at a couple of stations, enjoyed it immensely as a firefighter, and then decided I wanted to look at expanding my role, getting promoted, which I did. And I then went into the training department, and I was an instructor initially, and then I moved from being an instructor in a number of disciplines into the training management type role, where I was responsible for looking at the overall training, development and delivery for the fire service as a whole. So that was looking at a number of disciplines, from driving through to incident command, breathing apparatus, water rescue, all of the roles that people know that firefighters do, which are very wide and varied. And through that, there's a clear link between training, competence and safety. And that's where my interest was really peaked around the safety side of things, to make sure that we looked after the safety of our staff, not only the operational staff, but also everybody else that was involved within the business. Because it's a big machine, is the fire and rescue service. It's not just the people on the fire appliances. There's a very, very big back service that works there. And then subsequently, it lent on to be coming onto this role at the airport. And I felt that I needed some additional skills, because within the private industry, there's much more having to sell the safety side of things from a financial aspect, which is not so much the case within fire and rescue, because it's almost a given that we do things safely. Right, yeah. So as anyone that works within health and safety will know, when things cost money, certainly within private industry, you need to justify that. And I think that is a big part of the safety role.
Yeah, well, we've spoken about that with a few of our other colleagues, really, around you can actually spend quite a small proportion of your time dealing with safety, health and safety related issues. And the rest of the time you're using those other skills around justification, coaching, general leadership. And you need that full sort of arm, you need all of those things in your Swiss Army knife of being a health and safety practitioner to be able to draw on, don't you really?
Yeah, without a doubt. For me, it is around enabling tasks to be carried out safely. And the safety bit itself, the carrying out risk assessments, the looking at safe systems of work, the nuts and bolts of it, I find is quite easy. It's selling that to managers, and then the hardest bit of all is selling that to people who need to do that. And I find the easiest way to do that is involve them in the process.
Yeah, good advice.
people are involved in the process, there's a high likelihood that they'll actually, when you implement things, that they'll buy into that and do what you're asking them to do, because it's a very, very pointless task carrying out all the work in the background, having all the nice documentation, if people don't do what you want them to do.
You've spoken a lot about safety, and obviously you're at the sharp end of safety, or what you do within aviation. Do you get involved much in the health part of the health and safety role? Do you have any focus on that with your own teams then?
Yeah, I mean, we do. I get involved in the health side of things as well, and never more so than in the current climate with the coronavirus issues we've got going on, and the way that we've managed that to be able to continue to operate with a reduced hours that we've got, but we've still got people working. We've got a reduced number of people on site. But we've risk assessed the roles. We've looked at that from a number of ways. So we've looked at the tasks people do. We've looked at the amount of training they need to do to maintain competency and how we can continue with that. We've also looked at areas of vulnerability, so people who fall into a vulnerable group. We've followed the government guidance. Those people, where they can, are working from home, and where they can't, they're working in a way that we've risk assessed that, put control measures in place to ensure everybody's safety. And up to present, we've had no people off sick. We've had no one that's tested positive. In fact, we've had nobody with symptoms. So
fantastic.
We've done really well, albeit this area has been less impacted than probably some denser populated areas.
Did you make a deliberate decision then to move into well, of course you did, but what drove your deliberate decision to move into a pure health and safety role then, and leave the brigade and strike out as a chief professional?
When I left the brigade, it was mainly around I'd done my 30 years service, and so I was able to retire from there, and I was asked to come along and do this job by the company who actually employed me directly, and I came into this role with the safety background that I'd already had through the fire service. Initially, as I said, it was around managing the fire service here. However, fire and safety are very, very closely linked. So it was very much a natural progression to add more of the safety side of things to my existing knowledge and experience around firefighting, which, I mean, that is something that now is very, very easy to me because I've done it for so long. But safety is very much a moving feast that changes regularly. New legislation, new techniques, new hazards and risks that present themselves all the time, and that's very interesting to me, and that's sort of kept my motivation going very much so. And I think the benefits of allowing people and enabling people to do the job safely gives great job satisfaction.
Yeah, what we've spoken when we were talking about setting up this interview about the fact that your crews, who are your fire crew on the airport, are having to do lots of scenarios in terms of disaster management, if you like, lots of drills, and they're the same sorts of drills, or you're preparing for similar sorts of events. The aviation industry incredibly safe, as we know. How do you keep your crews motivated and focused each time you redo a drill, if you like? How do you keep them focused and doing their best every time?
I mean, we look at all the new techniques and any new ways of firefighting, because as with any other sector, technology improves and gives us new ways of doing things. So we're constantly looking at that. I mean, at the moment, we're getting some new vehicles which will be delivered shortly, and they will improve our capability. But I think one of the main motivators for us here is because, as you quite rightly said, aviation is a very, very safe sector. And we don't get many incidents, if any, large incidents with fires involved in aviation, not even the likelihood of getting one a year in the UK even, of a large type incident. So we're very, very lucky in that respect. But I think that the likelihood of something happening is low, whereas the severity can be very high. And that in itself is enough motivation for people to understand that they need to be at the top of the game should something happen. And I think to put things in sort of context, if you look at the catastrophic incident with Grenfell Tower, for example, in 72 lives lost there, which was clearly a major disaster. But day in, day out in airports throughout the world, there are aircraft with 200, 500, even up to 800 people on board. And one of those, could have an incident which could be completely catastrophic. So we need to be on the top of our game and deal with that incident the best that we can, with the training being paramount. And I think the other thing with it is that we understand that we won't get a second chance to get it right. Within some sectors, with some industries, if something goes wrong, it costs a little bit of money to replace a machine, or some financial impact. Whereas a huge loss of life is something that we need to ensure we do every single thing we can to mitigate that.
You say it when you think of it in that way, it's self-motivating, isn't it? I mean, I would say, actually, I think you and your colleagues in the aviation industry have made your own luck as well, haven't you? By the way, you've engineered things out, and the drilling that goes into making sure your teams are as informed and as competent as they possibly can be. You've spoken about this is almost your second career. You had a very successful first career. You've now moved into your second career. You've got a young family, but you still decided to undertake further studies. You still decided to undertake the diploma. How did you manage to get that work-life balance? How did you sort of manage your work and keep your focus?
Well, I think one of the main elements that allowed me to do it was the study method that I used. So I studied via Hull University as part of the part-time degree course, and started off with the safety diploma, which was predominantly one evening a week, and then within that some block weeks. So the airport supported me with the block weeks, which was great, allowed me to do the block weeks, and I did the evening in my own time. But I think the main thing that you need to do is to prioritise your time and get the best value from that. I won't deny it was challenging, as it should be. And I think that is the benefit from the qualification itself, is that it is, recognised internationally as the qualification to have. And it certainly isn't a gimme. So obviously the support from my family was brilliant as well. So my wife, she supported me through it. And then my little girl, that wasn't just an added challenge in there, trying to do it on about 3 hours sleep. But it's been very, very beneficial for me, because what I think the qualification has done is that's been the icing on the cake, that linked in with the experience that I've had. And I think I've done it probably the opposite way around to most people, but it's worked for me. I've had benefit of getting the experience first and then getting the qualification afterwards. And I do think you need both. So,
100%, yeah. Qualification can get you so far. Experience can get you so far, and we know the argument for competency is a blend of lots of different components. But I couldn't agree with you more. I think you're right as well. It's you choose a study option which works for you, but ultimately whichever route you take, you have to apply yourself as you did and give it the time and the structure required. So no, that's great. What advice would you give to aspiring practitioners, or what do you wish somebody had told you when you started out in your career?
I think you've got to understand what it is you're trying to achieve by going into the sector. And I think the understanding of it isn't an easy sector to work in, and the challenges are not challenges around seeking qualification necessarily. The challenges are much bigger than that, but the qualifications that you can achieve are brilliant in helping you get to where you need to be. But I think people need to understand the role of a health and safety practitioner is very much more than looking at the health and safety side. It's very much part of a management role, and a salesperson's role, and an enabler, and an implementer, and everything all in one. And that, I think, is why the safety role is very, very challenging and very, very rewarding. And it isn't just sitting at a desk writing some risk assessments and sending them out to somebody to do. And being part of that big process is great when you see an improvement within a business, so people can go from having maybe 10 reportable accidents a year to none or 2 or some sort of improvement, and you think, I've been part of that. And it is great to be part of that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. If you were to ask a layperson, what's your perception of what the role of a health and safety practitioner is? It won't be what the reality is, and the way you captured it. Maybe you have to be a salesperson, you have to be a coach, you have to have an eye for detail, you have to be an administrator, you have to be a trainer, a presenter. You need all of those facets. You need to work on those skill set in order
Yeah.
to be as successful as you possibly can be. So I thought that was a really great tip, actually. And I'd like to thank you for your time today and the excellent work that you're doing there at the airport that I fly out of sometimes, and it's a really good experience there. And it's nice to know there's such competent people involved. So thank you for that. Anyway,
No problem at all, mate. Cheers, Matt.
yeah, all the best.
Bye.
Bye.